Darkness is a powerful and evocative concept that can conjure a range of emotions and associations in the human psyche. For many, darkness represents the absence of light, a state of being in which things are hidden, obscured, or difficult to see. It can also evoke feelings of fear, uncertainty, and danger, as it often signifies the unknown and the unseen. Tenebrae, derived from the Latin tenebrae, meaning darkness or shadow, was a fitting name for one of the most powerful Sith to ever live. His abilities surpassed some of the greatest Force users in all of history, and his long life extended his influence for over 1,000 years. And yet, he was able to keep his true identity, purpose, and cause largely unknown to the wider galaxy.
You are listening to the Star Lords Podcast.
I find your lack of faith disturbing.
Are you stuck-up, half-witted, scruffy-looking nerf herder?
But I was going into Tashi Station to pick up some power converters.
I got a bad feeling about this.
Born in Shadow. In the old Sith Empire, during the rule of the great Mark Aragnos, a Sith Lord named Dramath ruled the planet of Midras, one of the many worlds ruled by the Empire. Dramath was known as a hedonist, and cared more for his personal pleasure than any greater aspirations amidst the Empire, content to rule his single world, an unknown, unassuming Lord amidst the ranks of many others. During one excursion with a poor farmer's wife, Lord Dramath conceived an illegitimate child, one of many due to his constant flights with females of this planet. The woman named the child Tenebrae. However, when Dramath learned of the Sith pup, he ordered his mother to drown the newborn. She disobeyed the command and secreted her son away, raising him as if he were the child of the farmer. As an infant, Tenebrae was said to have eyes as black as night, and to have never shown any emotion and would not even cry as a baby. After several years had passed, at the age of 6, Tenebrae's stepfather eventually discovered the truth about his wife's affair with Dramath, as Tenebrae exhibited force sensitivity despite neither of his parents possessing such abilities. In a fit of rage, the stepfather tried to attack his wife, but Tenebrae intervened by snapping his stepfather's neck. Following this act, the young Sith went on to subject his mother to torture, using the Force before ultimately killing her as well. He would go on to use his powers to manipulate, abuse, and control other members of his village. During the subsequent 4-year period, Tenebrae's sway and prestige increased, significantly as he subjected nearby villages and amassed legions of adherents. Some individuals were coerced into following the child due to apprehension of his overwhelming might, while others exhibited fanatical devotion. As Tenebrae ascended to power, he massacred thousands of individuals and carried out public executions in which he tortured people for days, deriving nourishment from their agony. Lord Dramath caught wind of rumors surrounding his son's actions, but as they were occurring in the remote northern continent, and also due to his own forgetfulness regarding his affair with Tenebrae's mother, the Sith Lord deemed them unworthy of his concern. At around the age of 10, Tenebrae's activities prompted Lord Dramath to investigate and determine whether he should eliminate or enslave the child. However, the Sith Lord underestimated Tenebrae's abilities, and upon revealing his true lineage, Tenebrae deprived Dramath of his Force powers, drove him insane, and ultimately killed him, trapping his soul in a holocron. Tenebrae subsequently launched a campaign to conquer the remainder of Midras, while his half-brother, Dramath II, fled the planet to evade Tenebrae and landed on the planet Rekiad. The child required 3 years to subjugate the planet, and any of Dramath's subordinate Sith lords who attempted to seize the throne were swiftly overcome by Tenebrae's power. Upon the completion of his campaign, Tenebrae journeyed to the Sith Empire's throne world of Ziost, where he presented himself before Marka Ragnos, the Dark Lord of the Sith, and head of the Sith Council. Recognizing the 13-year-old's remarkable strength, Ragnos granted Tenebrae the right to govern Midras as his own, and appointed him the rank of Sith Lord, bestowing upon him the title of Lord Vitiate. Upon returning to Midras, which he renamed to Nathema, Vitiate constructed a palace on the site of his childhood home and reigned over the planet for a century, dedicating much of his time to studying the enigmatic ways of the dark side. Early in his rule, numerous young Sith pledged their allegiance to Vitiate, and he tutored them on how to regulate their emotions and channel their internal anger to amplify their power. A New Life.
After the death of Marka Ragnos and the subsequent power vacuum left behind, Darth Vitiate did not engage much in the affairs beyond his planet, choosing to be a reclusive scholar rather than involve himself in the fight between Naga Sadow or Ludo Kresh. He also did not join the crusade against the Republic when the Sith launched the Great Hyperspace War, choosing instead to remain uninvolved and unnoticed, secret. However, sensing a great opportunity after the defeat of the Sith Empire, Vitiate began to make moves to secure his power and future. He began to broadcast messages out to the Sith worlds, stoking panic, with fear claiming correctly that the Republic would come back for revenge. He was proven correct when the Chancellor Poltimo ordered the invasion and ultimate destruction of Sith space. Offering a desperate escape from the devastation of their civilization, Vitiate rose to a position of leadership and summoned all remaining Sith lords to Nathema, promising them a ritual that would unleash the full power of the dark side. Meanwhile, his historians and scientists searched for the location of Dromund Kaas, one of the original colonies of the Empire. Shortly before the arrival of the other Sith Lords, the researchers theorized a new hyperspace route that led back to Dromund Kaas and prevented the Jedi from following. 3 days later, Vitiate announced the commencement of his ritual, but when the 8,000 Sith Lords answered his call, he dominated their minds and bound their wills to his, forcing them to participate in the ritual. It took 10 days to perform, with the entire planet of Nathema frozen in the grip of the dark side sorcery. Upon its completion, all life on the surface of the planet was annihilated, except for Vitiate, who absorbed the life force of the entire world. As a result, he gained unimaginable power and immortality, shedding his identity as Darth Vitiate and becoming simply the Emperor, a figure of immense power.
An Empire in Shadow. The Emperor, formerly Tenebrae or Darth Vitiate, blaming the Jedi for the destruction of Nathema, used the opportunity to lead his people towards salvation and safety from the Jedi, promising to create a new empire from the ashes of the old. The people, having seen him now as godlike in transcendence, readily agreed and worked towards building their new empire under his guidance. He led his people on a journey through the unknown regions, jumping blindly through hyperspace for 20 years, intentionally making his followers more and more dependent on him, until they finally found their way to Dromund Kaas, where the Emperor declared a new empire and offered his people the chance to build an orderly and powerful society that would one day gain revenge upon the Republic. Initially leading from the front, the Emperor began to retreat into seclusion. He created the Dark Council, a group of 12 Sith lords who became the primary ruling body of the Empire, while the Emperor spent his time studying the mysteries of the Force and unlocking its powerful secrets. He also established the Hand, a group of Force-sensitive pureblood Sith, who allowed him to draw on their strength to sustain his powers in exchange for sharing in his longevity. The Emperor's Hand operated from obscurity, a shadowy organization carrying out their master's will and remaining unknown to all but a few members of the Dark Council throughout the centuries. They adopted titles such as Servant 1, Servant 2, etc., abandoning their individual identities to show their devotion to their new purpose. These chosen few also began to exhibit enhanced Force aptitude, such as Servant 2, who gained the prophetic powers. However, they often came at a cost, such as his own sanity. The individual responsible for establishing the new Imperial military, Odal Viken, undertook a military operation in the untamed forest of Dromund Kaas to pave the way for the Sith capital of Kaas City by removing the wilderness. On the site that would become the Imperial Citadel, the center of operations for the Sith Order and the Ministries of War, Intelligence, and Logistics, Viken personally defeated a Terentatek. Over time, the Empire extended its influence from Dromund Kaas outward. The Emperor continued to expand the Dark Temple on the outskirts of Kaas City, transforming the ancient structure into a nexus of dark force energy through dark side rituals. The structure, initially built by the adherents of the Sith Lord Farshal during the reign of the Old Sith Empire, served as a resting place for Farshal and his adversary Bacchus, as well as many other spirits for several millennia. It was also the final resting place for the prominent Sith Lords such as Aloysius Calig and Ergast, either within the structure or in its vicinity before it was forgotten with the rest of the world. These rituals affected the atmosphere of Dromund Kaas, causing perpetual rainstorms and lightning, and created Sith spawn such as Akur, the Ghost in the Darkness. The Emperor also maintained chambers within the Sith Sanctum, which only the Dark Council and his personal guard were allowed to access. Vitiate also founded the Emperor's Guard, also called the Imperial Guard, the Sith Honor Guard, and the Dark Honor Guard, as a group of elite soldiers whose primary duty was to serve and protect the Sith Emperor of the reconstituted Sith Empire. They were created prior to 3959 BBY and comprised of individuals who lacked Force sensitivity, but were bonded to the Emperor mentally. As a result of this bond, each member of the Guard was extremely devoted to their leader and willing to sacrifice their lives to ensure his safety. Even the members of the Dark Council, who governed the Empire, were wary of the Guard's combat skills. These warriors underwent extensive training in various combat styles and were proficient in the use of a wide range of weapons, which made them formidable adversaries against even a single Jedi or Sith. Years would pass, and the new Sith Empire continued to build and expand, unbeknownst to anyone outside their borders, all overseen by the powerful and now reclusive Lord Vitiate. Despite his despotic rule, there were those who would attempt to oppose or undermine the Empire, in typical Sith fashion. These attempts were largely unsuccessful, however, as the Emperor had grown ever more powerful. Around 4606 BBY, Kelith a Sith who preached Jedi ideals of peace while using the dark side, was killed by the Emperor and his spirit was sealed in the Dark Temple. Vodal Kresh, another Sith Lord, attempted to create an army of slaves on Athis, but was unsuccessful, and the Emperor declared the planet off limits after Kresh's death. In a later period of the Emperor's reign, a Dark Counselor named Darth Locus led a failed plot to overthrow the Emperor and wage war against the Republic with the support of the other Council members. The Emperor allowed their plans to proceed before punishing Locus and killing the other conspirators with a flash of light. Locus vanished into the depths of the Citadel as the Emperor tortured and killed her. Lux in Tenebris.
At the onset of his empire, Tenebrae had pledged to destroy the Republic. But the importance of that objective waned among the Empire's people as time passed. Nonetheless, the Emperor intended to invade the Republic for reasons beyond revenge. He had discovered a way to amplify the anathema ritual to affect the entire galaxy, and he planned to fuel the ritual through war with the Republic. During a Kagath ritual duel around 4043 BBY, Darth Kalar and Darth Vitiate, two members of the Dark Council, engaged in a brutal fight that demolished the Imperial Citadel. Though the two survived the duel, the remaining council members combined their powers to eliminate them. To the surprise of the Dark Council, the Emperor emerged from seclusion and helped design the new citadel, assigning Darth Nostrum to build it precisely as planned. After the citadel's completion, the Emperor locked Nostrum inside to test the structure's intricate defenses, pleased when the Sith Lord perished without finding an exit. Decades later, several Dark Council members discovered the Emperor's true plan to annihilate the galaxy via the anathema ritual. Darth Nyrus and Darth Zedrix were among the conspirators who plotted to overthrow the Emperor and save their empire. In 3978 BBY, the Emperor dispatched a Sith emissary to Mandalore the Ultimate, convincing the warrior to help locate the remains of the exiled Lord Drameth and the second on Rekiad. The emissary also manipulated Mandalore to launch a war against the Republic to test its strength. This conflict became known as the Mandalorian Wars, lasting 16 years until Revan and Malak took command of the Republic military in 3962 BBY. Under Revan's leadership, the Republic gradually gained the upper hand until they finally confronted Mandalore at the Battle of Malachor V in 3960 BBY. Revan defeated Mandalore in single combat, while Meetra Surik, another Jedi commander, activated the mass shadow generator, destroying the world and creating an echoing wound in the Force. As Mandalore lay dying, he revealed to Revan that the Emperor had manipulated him. Revan had already captured the Emperor's attention by exploring Sith ruins in Korriban and Malachor V before the battle. The Emperor subtly manipulated Revan and Malak, themselves already tainted by their actions during the Mandalorian Wars, watching as they discovered his empire's existence on Rekiad, bringing the shadowy empire to light. After discovering the location of Anathema from a datachron belonging to the Emperor's half-brother who had escaped so many years ago, Drameth's tomb, Revan and Malak traveled to the barren world where they learned the location of Dromund Kath and witnessed the Emperor's immense power. They left their Republic fleet behind and covertly infiltrated the Imperial Citadel for months with the aid of an Imperial Guard member. After assuming the guise of mercenaries, Revan and Malak spent months gathering intelligence on the Empire and its leader, eventually uncovering the Emperor's plan for an invasion of the Republic. Rather than alerting the Republic of the imminent threat, the two Jedi, fueled by their pride and overconfidence, believed they could take down the Emperor single-handedly and sought to infiltrate the Imperial Citadel in Cass City. Unbeknownst to them, the guard, Yari, who they had recruited to aid them, was always bound to the Emperor's will, led the pair into a trap and betrayed them when they attempted to assassinate the Sith Lord in his throne room. The Emperor dominated their minds, as he had done to the Sith Lord's anathema years ago, and turned them to the dark side, naming them Darth Revan and Darth Malak. After extracting Republic secrets from their mind, the Emperor sent them to recover the Star Forge, a powerful space station constructed by the ancient Rakata to use in a new war against the Republic. The Sith Lord publicly announced that he had executed 2 assassins who had attempted to kill him. However, Revan and Malak broke free from the Emperor's conditioning and established their own Sith Empire, intent on conquering the Republic and defeating the Emperor, waging their own war against the Republic, and beginning what would become the Jedi Civil War.
Thanks for flying with us. Jordan here. Just wanted to let everyone know what's happening here at the Star Lords podcast. Star Lords is now on Discord. If you would like to join the Star Lords Cantina Discord server, you can find a link in the description or on any of our social media accounts. Reach out with a DM or email. We'd love to hear from you. You can find us on Facebook, Instagram, or Twitter by searching the Star Lords podcast. Go ahead and give our page a like and send us a message. You can also email at starlordspodcast@gmail.com. Send us your fan art, Star Wars collections, or fan fictions, and you may even get a feature on one of our pages or even the show. Don't be afraid to offer corrections or add to any of the topics that we discuss on the show. We are also on Patreon, so if you want to help us pay the bills, as well as get a few awesome perks like bonus episodes, access to the private Facebook group, or the VIP section of the Discord server, head on over to patreon.com/starlores and sign up for as little as $1 a month. And finally, make sure to subscribe to us on your favorite podcatcher app or YouTube, as well as sending us a 5-star review on iTunes. This really helps us reach a wider audience. Enjoy the rest of the show.
Welcome aboard the Millennial Falcon. This is Christian.
This is Jordan.
And we are currently sitting above the planet Jormund Cass. It's quite stormy, quite gloomy, quite dark.
Indeed.
Which seems to be the theme of this episode. We're talking about the great, the powerful Tenebrae, Darth Vitiate, the Emperor, and we'll go by new names in a future episode when we come back to revisit him.
Yeah. Certainly probably considered to be maybe top 3 most powerful Sith ever.
He's definitely up there.
Yeah.
I would even say contender for number 1.
Yeah, absolutely. He's contender for number 1. But I'm just to be on the safe side, let's say top 3.
Yeah, for sure.
Is there some sort of, we bring in 40K once in a while, but is there some allusions to 40K? He becomes like this reclusive emperor who is like barely ever seen. I mean, this kind of...
No, I don't think so.
He even changes his name to Emperor.
Yeah,
the Emperor.
But I know, but so does Emperor Palpatine too. We don't find out Palpatine's name until like much later. And he goes by the Emperor.
Does he not go by Emperor Palpatine?
I mean, we know him as that as like fans in the real world, but you'll look at
But
a lot
in
of
the
things.
oh,
in
really?
the movies, they refer to him as the Emperor all the time. They don't call him Emperor Palpatine. And I think so. To address that, which is an interesting thing to observe,
Yeah.
I think it has to do with the fact that the Sith, as a philosophy, don't expect to have successors. They expect to be the only ruler.
Yeah.
So they often adopt the Emperor, not Emperor 1 or Emperor 2 or Emperor my name, expecting that there will be a generation of people after me, because a lot of these emperors seek immortality.
That's right.
And so they are the Emperor and will be the only Emperor.
Yeah.
So it's
also
a recurring trait.
Also, when you're a Sith, it's kind of like risk management, right? Like if you allow an apprentice, an upstart who's infested with dark side energy, they're just going to kill you at some point. So,
and that's the only way that they have the right to rule, though.
Yeah.
It's like a catch-22.
Yeah, no, but that's what I'm saying. They don't exactly have mentors that they expect to replace them.
Exactly. Yeah.
That they're like, I'm going to pass the baton on to you.
There's no passing the baton.
Yeah.
There's only annihilation.
Yeah, that's right.
I guess kind of sticking to the note on referring to the Emperor of the Galactic Empire, which is Emperor Palpatine's empire.
Yeah.
There's a lot of mirroring between this empire, which is now kind of, I forget what, the reconstituted Sith Empire. Well, I'll get into this in a sec. It gets a little confusing with all empires and blah, blah, blah. But first, let's deal with this. So things like the Emperor's hands.
Yeah.
And the there was another thing that was like a direct reference to something. The Imperial Guards are like, they start with Valkyrion or Tenebrae. This is also going to get confusing with all the various names that the Emperor has.
Yeah.
They start with him as a tradition. So his Imperial Guards wear like red robes and armor, which is reflected in Palpatine's Red Guard. There's a different origin story to that, and we'll get to that in an Imperial Guard episode in the future. But this is kind of the first time we see that styling.
Yeah.
And then same with the whole Emperor's hands thing being like agents of the Emperor. That's something that Palpatine also does in the future, and they're even called Emperor's hands again. So,
yeah, I mean, even this tradition carries on into like the final epoch of Star Wars Legends with the Imperial Knights. Right?
Yes,
Like,
yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
But this is where it supposedly starts. Now, obviously, we know some of these origins are a little not the same, but thematically and like from an outside universe perspective, that is where you see a lot of those, like that mimicry.
Yeah.
Okay, so really quick to address kind of some confusion. Tenebrae, Vitiate, the Emperor, all the same guy.
Yeah.
And like I said, he will adopt some new names in the future, so kind of got to listen carefully to these episodes because we might use those names interchangeably. And as I said, we are going to revisit him. We're not done with his story by a long shot. This was just kind of an introductory piece. But yeah, I apologize to listeners. It's kind of the way it is. He changes his identity quite frequently.
Yeah.
And also when we're talking Sith empires or empires in general, we got to be kind of careful with how we use our words. So the old Sith Empire was like the empire that was started with the Dark Jedi, Ajunta Paul, and those Dark Jedi, and it ends with Ludo Kresh and Nega Sadow.
Yeah.
And Tenebrae was born in the time when Marco Ragnos was still emperor then.
Yeah, he was sort of in that era. Yeah.
So then we fast forward a few thousand years. We skipped over events like the old Sith Wars, which we will go back and address again in future episodes. So we're kind of time jumping, but just to give people also an idea of the timeline here.
Yeah.
So we kind of skip over the old Sith Wars, and now this empire during that period is hidden away. They escape the ruins of the old Sith Empire when the Republic reinvades in revenge for the Great Hyperspace War. Tenebrae goes into the unknown regions, finds Dromund Kaas, an old Sith colony, and starts to rebuild the Empire in secret. This is often referred to as the reconstituted Sith Empire.
Yeah.
So like Korriban, Zios, all those planets are wrecked, ravaged, become tomb worlds. And this is kind of where the Sith Empire resides during what we will discuss in future episodes.
Yeah.
But just to give people kind of frame of mental reference is where we're at. And the reason we decided to kind of do the episodes in this order is because we've already started talking about Darth Revan. And so with Darth Revan's story, where we left him off, he had gone into the unknown reaches to pursue this unknown threat when he disappears.
Yeah. What Mandalore the Ultimate had sort of given him clues about.
Yeah, exactly. And if you go back and listen to our Mandalorian Wars episode, we do discuss Mandalore the Ultimate and how he was manipulated by this Sith Emperor, who is Valkyrion, who is Vitiate. Sorry, I kind of gave that away. Spoilers. But who is Vitiate, who is Tenebrae? He was the emperor that manipulated and caused the Mandalorian Wars to happen.
Yeah.
The other thing to keep in mind is this emperor is living a long time.
Yeah.
I believe over 1,000 years at this point, by the time we get to Revan.
Yeah, I think Mark Ragnos was like 1,000 years prior
Before
to Revan.
Yeah.
So
that's the kind of timeline we're looking at. The Tenebrae is like extending his life force for this long.
Yeah. And he's obviously using like that force technique of like force absorption, where he's like absorbing life force.
Exactly. He just keeps doing these rituals where he like consumes people's souls, and then also as he lives, he's binding people to his souls to continually extend his life.
I also got to say, like the imagery of these rituals are like, I mean, if they're ever, I haven't like read them in comics or anything, but if they're ever like on a screen, man, to really capture, I think, what's going on, it'd have to be pretty like demonic almost, you know, like very horror film.
Yeah, like slashing goat necks and drawing pentagrams on the floor.
Yeah.
There was a really crazy comic book. I can't remember. It was like a short story where Palpatine conducts some kind of Sith ritual. And it's like, like he's doing like pseudo witchcraft and like he's like writhing and like his robes are like flailing. And it's just very like horror-esque. And yeah, I imagine that's what a lot of these Sith rituals kind of look like, is like, yeah, like you said, like demonic, satanic ish.
Right. Yeah.
But yeah, sorry, kind of going back to the timeline and everything. Yeah, that's kind of to get everyone on the same page here. So then when Revan and Malak kind of disappear after kind of concluding the Mandalorian Wars, this is where they go. And we don't know this as fans for a long time. They just went to the unknown regions, did something, and came back as Sith Lords.
Yeah.
This
with like a huge army.
Yeah, exactly.
Inexplicably.
Yeah. And then start attacking the Republic, which we'll get into in a future episode. So I won't talk too much about that now. But I will say that it is a bit of a controversial piece, because a lot of what we're talking about with Tenebrae and stuff was written after the first Knights of the Republic game to like fill in those blanks left behind.
Yeah.
And a lot for the Star Wars RPG.
I'm not sure they really even had a backstory at that point. Like
it was just kind of left to be a mystery. But then
I think the MMO and stuff, they sort of
this character was developed from the MMO.
Yeah.
And so to that point, a lot of fans aren't super happy about it. I know I've mentioned this in a previous episode. It really just robs Revan and Malak of their agency. Yeah. Turning them into mind slaves of the Emperor. Right, yeah. And they do kind of go back on it a little bit, I think, to try and salvage the characters. And they say they kind of break away from the Emperor's will, but now they want the Starforge for their own interests. But still, it's kind of... I don't like that piece of it.
Yeah, I think if they had made it that like Revan and Malak ultimately just killed Vitiate and took his empire, that would almost
and anointed themselves as new rulers. Yeah,
that would have made more sense.
Yeah, and again, it kind of eats away at like the buildup of things like the Mandalorian Wars being this morally gray experience. I kind of rotted the core of these noble Jedi who started the war as like heroes and ended as villains, right? It takes away from that one, like, oh, just kidding, mind control.
Yeah, well, I mean,
that's still there.
You could make the argument that they were already being corrupted by the dark side.
Sure,
and there's a lot of evidence for that.
Yeah, true, fair.
So they were sort of open to being turned.
Yeah,
fully
maybe
to the
they
dark
open
side.
their mind to manipulation.
And you got to remember, like, for Revan and Malak, they had no exposure to the teachings of the Sith, like at all, until like they encountered these datacrons and went into like the unknown regions. Like, this was like the big concern with Master Vrook. Like, he didn't want them searching, like trying to uncover hidden knowledge, because that would be like the Sith knowledge, right?
Right.
The knowledge of good and evil, the oldest story in the book. So,
Right.
but like, yeah, I mean, you could make an argument for it, but I agree. Like, it would have been more consistent with Revan's character if, perhaps like he had learned all these Sith teachings, turned to the dark side, and did what every other Sith does, which is kill the most powerful Sith
and then
become
take
the
over.
top dog.
Yeah.
You know,
Which again would also even elevate Revan that much more.
that's right. Yeah,
But yeah, so it kind of undercuts him a little bit, and
I agree.
yeah,
I agree.
I'm just debating whether or not I want to bring up this point now, or I'll save it for a future episode when we come back to visit our friend Tenebrae. But there are some other critiques about him. I'll save it for another episode, so stay tuned.
Okay.
But there are some critiques about how the character of Tenebrae is also handled just through the MMO.
Yeah. Okay. Fair enough. I never played the MMO, so I don't know a whole lot just from what I've read. I will say, like, I know there has been like some criticisms of some of these expanded universe Force users, where it becomes a little bit not grounded anymore. Like, like unhinged.
How do you even stop this?
Yeah. They become so powerful. Like, if you think about someone like Palpatine from the original movies, like, yeah, he was certainly powerful.
Yeah,
but he wasn't
like an eldritch monster.
Yeah. And you got like Tenebrae, and you have Nihilus,
Nagasato blowing up suns.
That's right. Yeah. You have like these characters who are like, they're super weapons in and of themselves, right?
Yeah.
And the Sith as they're presented in the original films, just like they're more grounded is all I'm saying.
Yeah. And the story then again undercuts them, right? Like,
yeah,
Vader becomes suddenly a lot less menacing when you have Sith who are able to consume souls and planets. And
that's right. Yeah.
I will say again, one of the other criticisms about Tenebrae is that he also mimics some existing Sith that were already established, so it's kind of like a cheap knockoff syndrome. Nihilus, especially around the whole consuming life and extending life.
They just kind of ripped that off of Nihilus.
Yeah, exactly. So, which we'll get to a Nihilus episode too ourselves at some point. But
which I actually still really like the character of Nihilus and Scion, but like I've mentioned it before. I think KOTOR 2 is so underappreciated. But
definitely.
Like there, I can like understand the criticism that these like sort of characters like Vitiate just become like so way over the top that it's like, I don't know.
Yeah, no, everything. I do agree with everything.
It's like Dragon Ball Z.
Yeah,
right?
You just keep going up, and then the power levels don't even mean anything, and it just becomes insane.
Yeah,
yeah, and I share all those same sentiments.
Yeah.
I do like Vitiate. He's almost like an irredeemable evil. Like, just even from childhood, he's just bad.
Yeah, I actually kind of like that about him too.
Yeah, because everyone's always now trying to be like a sympathetic Sith.
Right, yeah.
Which is cool. Like, I love Anakin and I love Darth Vader. He's actually my favorite Sith. But and that's a cool story. But I also like a guy who's just bad to the core.
Yeah, he was like a psychopath child, like the kind of kid that kills cats.
Right, exactly. Like, there is no good in this guy at all.
Yeah, and he is, even though he is like, I mean, in a lot of ways, he was very smart and calculated, but like he was very brutal and cruel.
Yeah,
like an incredibly
and even like
sadistic.
Unnecessarily cruel. Right, like I could understand cruelty as a tool, but cruelty for the sake of cruelty, just because he can.
Yeah, I think he was more of a sadist than probably even most Sith were.
Yeah,
so.
And maybe that's what lends to his power, is that like...
Yeah, I think he sort of, that fed into his dark side energy.
Yeah. Yeah, even as a child, that's what it says, right? He even used the anger of his father wanting to hurt his mother.
Yeah.
And then he turns around and tortures and kills his mother anyways, right? So it wasn't even like, I'm protecting my mom. It's like, I'm just going to kill everyone.
Yeah.
Kind of, again... We mentioned this at the beginning of the episode, but Tenebrae, his name, is Latin for darkness, gloom, or obscurity, again, in the tradition of Sith names.
Yeah.
But also his adopted Darth name, Darth Vitiate, is also Latin, and it means having been corrupted, defiled, or voided. And in English, vitiate means to spoil, impair, weaken, or corrupt. So
I like the name.
yeah, they
Vitiate.
sound cool.
Yeah, it's a cool
like I almost want to
sounding
name my
name.
kid that if
Yeah.
it didn't mean corruption. But even his future names, I already mentioned it, but Valkyrion is a cool name too.
Yeah.
Yeah.
For sure.
Again, spoilers. If you haven't played the RPG or gonna listen to our future Valkyrion episode or our future Tenebrae episodes. Yeah. Beyond that, I think that's all my thoughts on him. I don't hate the character. I wish they had done some things different, but overall, I think he's fine.
I think he's cool. I think if they went with like just irredeemable sadist character, and they could have made him powerful, but maybe just
Toned him down a little
bit, like not, and maybe just more leaned into like he was the one Sith who figured out immortality or something like that, or figured out how to extend his life.
Yeah, that life extension piece on its own is a pretty big deal because that's like the holy grail that all Sith are trying to chase.
That's right. Yeah,
is extending their life and reaching that immortal state. Right?
Yeah, that alone would have made him like a legend among the Sith. But to sort of add like this guy can destroy planets and kill thousands of other Sith.
Yeah,
by
and
himself.
mind control people like Revan and Malik and whole Sith.
I mean,
lords.
it almost begs the question: why did he even like bother with getting Mandalore the Ultimate to start a war? Why didn't he just go in and wipe them out himself? He was so powerful.
Yeah,
like
for gameplay purposes.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. If they ratcheted it down a little bit, it would have been maybe a little more believable.
Yeah, absolutely.
His story. But anyways.
Cool. Well, with that, let's get out of here. This place is giving me the creeps.
Well, before that, though, make sure everyone give us a 5-star rating and review. Follow us on all our socials. Star Lores on Instagram, Facebook, Twitter. We're also on Discord if you want to support the show. For $3 a month, you can get all the paywalled content at Starlore or at patreon.com/Star Wars. Star Lores. And I think that's about it.
All right, awesome. Let's go before some Force ghost comes after us.
Yeah. Peace.